My wife texted, "I'm keeping the house in the divorce. You can find somewhere else to live." I replied, "Good luck with that." 2 weeks later, her lawyer was calling me, begging to negotiate after seeing the property documents. Tuesday afternoon, I was at the office when my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. We'd been married 3 years, together for 5. The relationship had been rocky for months, but this text was something else. "Tom, I've made my decision. I'm filing for divorce and I'm keeping the house. You can find somewhere else to live. I've already talked to a lawyer." I stared at the message for a solid minute. The audacity was breathtaking. The house she wanted to keep was the one I bought 2 years before we even met. The one I'd paid cash for using inheritance money from my grandfather. The one where her name had never appeared on a single piece of paperwork. My reply was simple. "Good luck with that." She texted back immediately. "My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything, including the house, since we're married." I didn't respond. That evening, I came home to find Rachel in the living room with papers spread across the coffee table. Divorce paperwork from the look of it. "Tom, we need to talk about the division of assets. I just want what's fair." I kept walking toward the kitchen. "Nothing to discuss. I'm being reasonable here. I could ask for alimony too, but I'm not. I just want the house. The house isn't yours to want. We're married. We built a life here together." I grabbed a beer from the fridge. Rachel had lived in my house for 18 months after we got married. Before that, she'd had her own apartment downtown. I pulled out my phone and called Jim Patterson, the real estate attorney who'd handled the purchase. Left a voicemail asking him to send me copies of all the original property documents. Then I called my divorce lawyer buddy, Mark. "Mark, it's Tom Sullivan. I need representation. My wife just demanded the house in our divorce. The house you bought with your grandfather's inheritance in 2020, that's the one." "Oh, this should be good." Update 1 week later. Rachel moved fast with her lawyer. Some guy named Davidson she'd found through online reviews. Apparently, he'd been practicing family law for about 5 years and had decent ratings for fighting for women's rights. His first move was sending me a formal demand letter claiming Rachel was entitled to marital property rights in the house based on her contributions as a homemaker and the commingling of marital assets. The letter demanded I either agree to sell the house and split proceeds or buy out Rachel's interest at current market value. It gave me 30 days to respond. Mark read it and shook his head. "This guy's fishing. He's hoping you don't have proper documentation or that there's some gray area he can exploit." "There's no gray area." "I know that, but Davidson's probably hoping Rachel contributed money to improvements, or that you refinanced during marriage and added her name somewhere." Mark's response was thorough. Property purchase documents from March 2020, showing I bought the house using inheritance funds 6 months before Rachel and I even started dating. Bank records proving the inheritance deposit. Estate documentation from my grandfather's will. Marriage certificate from August 2023, showing we'd been married less than 18 months. The letter politely explained that the house was separate property under state law and suggested Davidson review the relevant statutes before proceeding. Meanwhile, Rachel had been busy acting like the house was already hers. She'd started talking to contractors about renovating the kitchen, and told her family she was keeping the place. Thursday evening, I came home to find Rachel's sister Amy, helping her pick out paint colors. "Tom, good. You're home." Rachel's been telling me about her plans for the house. "What plans?" "The renovations. New kitchen. Maybe out of deck off the back." "There won't be any renovations." Rachel looked up from paint samples. "We haven't talked about my settlement offer yet because there's no settlement to offer." "Tom, be reasonable. I've put 2 years into this house making it a home. You've lived here 18 months and bought some decorative pillows. I've done more than that." "Like what specifically?" "I organized everything, coordinated repairs, managed the household. You hired a cleaning service that I paid for and ordered takeout most nights." Amy jumped in. "Rachel's been a full partner in this marriage, Tom. Marriage doesn't give her ownership of property I bought before we met." Update 2, the reality check. Davidson's second letter arrived 10 days later. This one was more aggressive, claiming they'd found evidence of Rachel's financial contributions to the property. It threatened to file a formal motion with the court seeking equitable distribution. Mark was curious now. What contributions could they possibly claim? Beats me. Let's find out. Mark called Davidson directly and asked for specifics. The conversation was apparently enlightening. Davidson claims Rachel paid for landscaping last spring and bought a new washing machine, Mark reported back. Also says she painted 2 bedrooms. The landscaping was her Mother's Day gift to herself that she charged to my credit card. The washing machine replaced one that broke and cost $800, and she painted one accent wall in the bedroom because she was bored. That's what they're calling financial contributions. Apparently. Mark's response was swift and detailed. He itemized every household expense for the past 18 months, showing I'd paid mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and repairs totaling over $40,000. Rachel's contributions: washing machine, mulch for flower beds, and paint for one wall. Total, maybe $1,200. The letter concluded that even if these minimal contributions created some theoretical interest, it would amount to roughly 3% of the property value, not the 50% she was claiming. Davidson apparently took the weekend to digest this information. Update 3. The phone call. Monday morning, Mark's phone rang. Davidson wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss settlement options. Settlement options, Mark left. Your client has contributed $1,200 to a property worth $400,000. The settlement is she gets nothing. My client has legal rights as a spouse. Your client has rights to marital property. This isn't marital property. Perhaps we could work out some kind of compensation for her domestic contributions. What domestic contributions? The house was cleaner when she moved in. The meeting was set for Thursday afternoon. Davidson insisted Rachel didn't need to attend since it was just preliminary discussions between attorneys. At the meeting, Davidson looked nervous. He brought a stack of research on separate property laws and obviously spent time learning what he should have known before taking the case. Gentlemen, I appreciate you taking this meeting. After reviewing the documentation more thoroughly, I think we can reach an amicable resolution. Mark leaned back. What resolution? Your client contributed a washing machine to my client's separate property. Mrs. Sullivan has been a devoted spouse who contributed significantly to the household. Devotion doesn't create property rights, I said. Perhaps Mr. Sullivan would consider a nominal settlement to avoid litigation costs. What kind of nominal settlement? Mark asked. Maybe $10,000 as recognition of Mrs. Sullivan's contributions and to help her transition to independent living. $10,000 for what exactly? For her years of homemaking and domestic labor. Mark pulled out his calculator. Let's see. 18 months of marriage. Mrs. Sullivan worked part-time and hired cleaning services my client paid for. So maybe she did dishes twice a week and bought groceries occasionally. That's about 50 hours of actual domestic work. You're asking for $200 an hour for basic housework. Davidson was getting flustered. That's not how domestic contributions are valued. How are they valued? Based on the benefit to the household and the spouse's sacrifice of earning potential. What earning potential? She worked part-time before marriage and works part-time now. Zero sacrifice. Look, my client just wants enough to secure housing while she gets back on her feet. Mark shook his head. Your client's housing needs aren't my client's responsibility. She can get back on her feet using her own feet. The meeting ended with Davidson promising to discuss options with Rachel. Update 4, the collapse. 2 days later, Davidson called Mark directly. My client wants to drop the property claim and proceed with a simple dissolution. Smart choice. She'd still like some assistance with moving expenses. Not happening. What about temporary spousal support while she finds a new place? She has a job and her own income, she can find her own place. Mr. Sullivan could at least help with a security deposit. Mr. Sullivan could also buy her a car and pay her rent for a year, but he's not going to do that either. That evening, Rachel tried one final approach. Tom, I talked to my lawyer. He says my case isn't as strong as he initially thought. Your case never existed. I know that now, but I'm in a tough spot financially. You work at the boutique. You have income. Part-time income. I can't afford a decent department on what I make. Then get a full-time job. It's not that easy at my age. Rachel was 31. Could you at least help with first month's rent somewhere? Just to get me started. No. Tom, we were married for 3 years. That has to count for something. It counted until you tried to steal my house. I wasn't trying to steal anything. I thought I had rights. You thought wrong. That's not my problem to fix. Final update. 1 month later, the divorce finalized without drama. Once Rachel dropped her property demands, she kept her personal belongings, her car, and her part-time job. I kept everything I'd owned before marrying her. Davidson apparently learned a valuable lesson about researching property ownership before filing demands. Mark heard he'd been more careful about taking cases involving separate property claims. Rachel moved in with her sister temporarily, then found a one-bedroom apartment near her work. She'd been telling people I'd kicked her out of her home, but the story fell apart when details emerged about whose name was actually on the deed. Her mother called me a few weeks after everything was final. Tom, Rachel's having a hard time adjusting financially. I'm sure she is. She really thought she had a claim to the house. Her lawyer told her marriage gave her rights. Her lawyer was wrong. Couldn't you help her out just this once? Maybe co-sign a lease or something. Mrs. Henderson, I'm not responsible for Rachel's financial planning anymore. She's struggling to make ends meet on her salary. She was struggling before we got married too. That's why she moved in with me instead of getting her own place. That seems harsh. What's harsh is trying to take someone's house because you don't want to pay your own rent. The conversation ended there. Last week, I saw Rachel at the grocery store. She looked tired and stressed, but didn't approach me. I heard from mutual friends she'd picked up more hours at the boutique and was considering getting a roommate to help with expenses. The whole situation was a perfect example of what happens when someone confuses living somewhere with owning it. Rachel spent 18 months in my house and somehow convinced herself that made her a property owner. When reality hit, she learned that wanting something doesn't create legal rights to it. Marriage doesn't entitle you to assets your spouse acquired before you existed in their life, and hiring a lawyer to validate your assumptions just makes the disappointment more expensive. She thought she could divorce me and keep my house as a parting gift. Instead, she got exactly what she'd contributed to purchasing it. Nothing.